Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for joining another live stream Own Your Judaism conversation. My name is Moish Steigman, the Mindful Rabbi. I am thrilled that you can join us once again. Today, I have the great joy and honor of welcoming Rabbi Dr. Shmuly Yanklowitz. He is the president and dean of the Valley Beit Midrash, a Jewish pluralistic adult learning and leadership. The founder of and president of Uri Litzedek, Jewish social justice advocacy, the founder and CEO of Shamayim for Jewish animal advocacy, the founder and president of YATOM, Jewish foster and adoption network, and the author of 18 books on Jewish ethics. Newsweek also named Rav Shmuly as one of the top 50 rabbis in America, and the Forward named him as one of the 50 most influential Jews. In addition to all of the prestigious bio for Rav Shmuly, Shmuly, you and I have known each other, I think it was 2006 that we met in the summer, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We worked together at a program in Washington, D.C. Called Panim. It was a summer program specifically for teens. It was a pluralist summer program which combined Jewish learning, social advocacy, political advocacy, ethics. It just combined it all. And we had the joy and pleasure of meeting then. And for all of the wonderful memories and stories that I have of you, Shmuly, I'll tell you what sticks out the most if I can.
Please.
It's exactly what you're doing right now. That wonderful, inviting, engaging smile. Every time I think of you, you just have that smile on your face. So thank you, my friend and my colleague and my inspiration. Thank you for taking the time to join me this afternoon.
Thank you, Reb Moish. Reb Moish, what an honor and delight to be with you in this wonderful, the Mindful Rabbi program. It's a delight. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. So this is really about owning your Judaism and making your Jewish life and journey your own and personal. And Shmuly, you have such a wonderful and remarkable Jewish path and Jewish journey. So tell me a little bit about your Jewish life, please.
My Jewish life, it's an amazing question, Jewish and life, because life is so human, it's so universal, it's so broad and expansive. And Jewish, we almost think of as narrow and restricting and a qualifier to human life. And yet the two for me are so synergistic. They're so universalistically and particularistically expansive. So Jewish life, I love the way you frame that. And for me, the way I experience that today partially is through my children, the blessing of children, because I think more about their Jewish lives in some way than my own. And yet I know when people say, Rabbi, how do I get my kids to love Judaism? I say always the same answer. You have to love it. You have to love it. So it's not enough for me to care about their Jewish life. The question is, what do I do with my Jewish life? I have to be growing. I have to be thinking and engaging, not only because it matters, but because if I care about their Jewish lives, then it matters for me. And for me, I live at the intersection of traditionalism and progressivism. I feel deeply called to the past and to the future. I feel alive by my children and, God willing, grandchildren and the future generations to come. And I feel invigorated by our ancestors and our stories and our inheritance. And that moment of, geez, how do I preserve this past while also adapting to the future while being spiritually present in the moment? And this is one of the reasons I love tefillah. I love prayer, because prayer is rooted in the words of the past. It is a yearning for a better future, and it's about a radical presence. And so my Jewish life is evolving. It's adapting, it's progressive, it's traditional, it is child-based, it is adult yearning, and it is prayer-rooted. Prayer not in just the Shema and the Amidah, the traditional prayers we've inherited, but prayer in the sense of living prayerfully, with bracha on the lips, with blessing on the lips, with yearning for Shamayim, with a clinging towards the heavens, with a sense of godly presence.
You know what you've done so beautifully in just those couple of minutes, Shmuly, is you took all of these dichotomies that appear not only within Judaism, but within life. And these dichotomies, which from my perspective often tend to challenge people or threaten people, sometimes push people away and say, it's too much, it's too hard, it's too tense. And you just took all of these dichotomies and put them in such a beautiful package as such an inspiration and a galvanizing message.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I do believe in the idea of living in the struggle and living in the tension and holding paradox as a spiritual practice.
We are Am Yisrael, the people who wrestles with God, right? People who
Exactly.
wrestle. Beautiful. Thank you. So what has inspired you along your Jewish journey?
You know, there is so much to point to. And let me point to my emerging adulthood experiences, because I think for most of us, those tends to be the most transformative years. Of course, we can have transformation any time in our life. And without a doubt, as a late teen, my first trip to Israel, where I thought of Judaism as kind of confined to the sanctuary, nothing wrong against the sanctuary, but seeing it alive on a society basis, diverse, eclectic, in tension, in harmony in Israel, inspired me deeply. Then I look at the first Sefer, the first Jewish book I learned in its entirety, which was in Hebrew and English, was the Chafetz Chaim, the Shmirat HaLashon, guarding the tongue. Where I was raised as a kid, sticks and stones will break your bones, little sayings, try to talk nice. But then I read a book with the details of the ethics of speech and the complexities of how we affect each other through our written words, our spoken words. And I was blown away, not just that he had all the answers, but by the level of detail in terms of how we can think of the meaning in our lives. Then I think of a rabbi who I met as a little bit before or after my bar mitzvah, where she spent over an hour in a coffee shop with me. This is something you would do, Reb Moshe. Sitting there, just answering my dozens of questions I had made a list of, giving me all the time in the world as if she didn't have other appointments that day. And I thought of just the presence, the relational dimension. And I'll point to one more for now, which was the spirit of service. The sense that I got that Judaism was not just a self-help book. It was not just about how do I thrive in the world and give me the answer so I can thrive, although that is valuable, but also how do I transcend the self? How do I be of service to others? And I saw that deeply in the global South. I saw that in America. I saw that in Israel. I saw that in local communities. This sense that if we come together as community, the question inevitably will emerge, how are we going to give back?
So you brought up two powerful ideas here. One is the power of words and the power of language. You talked about that when it comes to prayer. You talked about that when it comes to the readings of the Chafetz Chaim, that words have tremendous impact. You're also bringing up now this passion and necessity and urgency for service, right? So I don't know if these two are conjoined somehow, if one inspires the other, if it's circular, but both seem to have inspired you in your Jewish life, because you're doing Judaism either that a lot of us haven't thought about, or that maybe we've imagined and dreamt of, but never have really kind of put our proverbial Jewish money where our mouth is. So how do all these work together for you?
So for me, I really feel that, Rav Kook says, based on the first blessing many of us recite when we wake up, Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam, thanking God that we're alive when we wake up in the morning. And Rav Kook says, chai v'kayam. Chai means alive and evolving, and kayam means rooted and not changing. And for me, I find Jewish rootedness to not be chains, but actually be liberating as wings to fly. That in finding consistency, the power of ritual, I find that to enable me to engage more expansively. And so that once again comes back to my theme of traditionalism and progressivism. And for me, whether it's the Israeli society, whether it is the power of speech, whether it's the one-on-one relational moments, whether it's the spirit of service to the other, some of those points I pointed to, those are all interconnected when we root them in the midot, in the character traits of courage, of humility, of kindness. If we're focused on our avoda, on our service, on our growth, so much can emerge from that. I've got so far to go in that, but that's what excites me, is the idea that we have so much more to learn and grow every day.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. I'm thinking about all of the work that you've done. And again, for people who didn't jump right in at the beginning, go read Rabbi Shmuly's bio. It's unbelievable. It's incredible, all of the various things that you are doing with your time. And I don't ask this either to disrespect your influencers and your motivators. I also don't do this to put you on too high of a pedestal, despite my genuine admiration for all of your work, Shmuly. But do you know of other people doing all the kind of work you're doing? Do you have like pointed role models? Have there been How did you figure out to do all of these things? I mean, it's such diverse work that you're doing, from teaching, from learning, political activism, justice, for all the work that you're doing. How did you put this all together?
Well, I've always admired folks who can really have one focus and really solidify their interests and passions in one channel. I think for most it can be more effective that way. Mm-hmm. And I admire those who are able to take existing institutions and continue to build from them and transform them, whether it's a federation or a JCC or a synagogue or a school. And the truth is that social entrepreneurship has been a big struggle for American Jewish life over the last few decades. We talk about it like there's an innovation bubble bursting everywhere, but actually it's not true. Most endeavors fail, and most endeavors aren't sustainable. And so it is very hard to build new nonprofits and to sustain them. And a lot of my time and work is spent not doing the things that I'm most interested in doing, like managing and back-end stuff and fundraising and these types of things. But I really just feel very charged to be alive, to respond to the Jewish issues that speak to me most deeply. And one of the ways I understand that leadership, and this goes back to owning your Judaism, I love that, is that we should own what truly is uniquely ours, and that intersects with what is others, but to be bold enough and confident enough and humble enough to really embrace what speaks to us. And for me, that means that leadership is not about getting in line to do what 1,000 other people want to do. It's about filling gaps of what others don't want to do. So to find the areas of what excites us and fill those gaps. I saw there was a gap in serving foster kids. It's a passion of mine. I saw there was a gap in bringing light to animal advocacy. I saw there was a gap in pluralistic adult learning on a high level. I saw some of these gaps, and I had a passion for them. And so I feel I say this is no disrespect for those who want to work more in the institutions, because I think it's wonderful. But I think for those who have the passion to try to build something new and want to do it not just for themselves and for their family, there's a lot of room out there, and there's a lot of appetite to own your own Judaism, but own it and share it. Own it and bring others in as well.
So whether you know it or not, you're almost speaking the exact tagline of my organization. My nonprofit
exactly. Of course I know it. Yes.
It is the Spark Wisconsin, and the guiding questions, and the Mindful Rabbi is a project of the Spark Wisconsin. Yes. And the organization's questions are: what are you looking for in your Jewish life that you're not yet finding, and how do you build community around it? Right? Put much more eloquently, this is what are the gaps, right? That's exactly what you're saying. And I can speak from my experience, but I'm much more interested in yours. I have to imagine you've encountered barriers along the way, right? Because on the one hand, it can be inspirational, it can be galvanizing. I imagine it can be threatening as well.
Yes, absolutely. There are larger institutions that feel threatened by innovative endeavors. Some of the nature of my work runs up against some of the ultra-Orthodox establishment or some of the far-right establishments. Some of my work runs up against kind of some of the conventional norms of our community. And so there are those barriers. But what I've come to learn is that the biggest barrier in owning our Judaism, the biggest barrier is internal. It's internal. The biggest barrier we experience is that voice that's saying you're not good enough, or your Judaism is not authentic, or your Judaism doesn't matter, or you can't do it, right? And this is what the Baal Shem Tov teaches, the founder of Hasidut, that the things we dislike in the world are mirrors to our own souls. They tell us the work we have to do. Anything we don't like in the world is also telling us something about ourselves. And so too, that to channel Rabbi Nachman, as I understand it, that the microcosm resembles the macrocosm, which is to say, what's yearning on an internal level for us has a great potential outside of us as well. And so, and one more Rabbi Nachman, he says, not that God places obstacles in front of us, but that God is the obstacle. God is within the obstacle. That is to say, in encountering these barriers, we find divinity itself. And so I really do believe that. And I do believe that overcoming these obstacles are not for everyone. Some people want to own their Judaism in a way that is purely comfortable and happy, and that's wonderful. And others understand that the type they want is going to require a struggle, a challenge, maybe with family, maybe with community, maybe with themselves. And I give the blessing to them as well, and I hope you'll give it back to me, that we should have the strength to persevere that.
Yeah, I love that message that that a person's path to owning their Judaism is individual, right? And we often tend to think of the pressures, if it's society, if it's our community, if it's our parents, if it's all these pressures that we feel. Maybe we don't feel we're good enough as Jews, but really the biggest barrier is the internal one, right?
Yes.
We can find our connection with God, our connection with Judaism, our connection with community, our connection with ourselves, if we're just willing to push forward a little bit.
Yes, and let me name one other vice which I didn't name and we don't talk as much about. But the truth is, it's laziness. That sometimes in building our own community, we can have all this passion and we lose our momentum. And so I don't say this to be accusatory of anyone, because I myself struggle with it, but the sense of like, how do we not just show up for community, build community, be passionate about our Judaism when it's most exciting, but live with the consistency, live with the grit, live with the passion to even build it when it doesn't feel exciting, because we know we need it. We need it. This is not just a luxury, right? This is something we need meaning. We need the life of the spirit. We need ethics. We need other people. We need this in our lives, even when we don't feel like it.
I love it. You know, we have to constantly disrupt ourselves and disrupt our lives to push forward, right? And sometimes we can do such a great job building community that we don't want to disrupt anything. We just want to keep it as it is.
Yes.
So, you know, Shmuly, now that we're talking, just to let everyone know, whenever I have a conversation guest, I always send a list of questions and a list of prompts ahead of time. We don't go fully by script because this is a living conversation. It's not a formal interview, but I'm inspired now to ask you something about the future, if I may, because we've talked a little bit about the past, a lot about the present. And I'm wondering, Shmuly, and I apologize for putting you on the spot, and feel free to not answer. What's your vision for Judaism in the future? What's your future vision for Judaism?
Yes.
Or for Jews?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I do think of those two things as very different. Yeah. Jews are incredibly diverse in literally every sense. So I can't speak too much to a vision for Jews, but I can speak to a vision for Judaism, which is that, let me first name what I think is not the vision. And that is mass assimilation on one end, that doesn't see Judaism as meaningful in conversation with the moment, as morally robust, that isn't educated beyond a bar bat mitzvah, one that is lazy and dispassionate and discarded ultimately. And I don't mean to say that in any way accusatory. I just mean that's not a vision forward. Is that Judaism is like a movie. You watch it for entertainment and then you go back to life. I also think that fundamentalism on the other end is not the answer, that the world is changing so rapidly and we want to avoid assimilation, so we should build higher walls and isolate ourselves more. But I do think the vision is the middle path, that we need to be a part of society in the deepest ways, and we need to be rooted in our Judaism itself. And what I think the vision that emerges from that balance is ultimately a Judaism that is on the front lines of global transformation, of the world, of society, of America, of our family, and of our communities, and of ourselves. And for me, that is soul rooted. It is soul rooted, and I don't mean this only in a Kabbalistic sense, it can be a rational sense also, that we change the world from the inside out. We are so introspected and growing in our inner lives, in our soul work, in our intellectual work, our emotional work, that it overflows into the world. It overflows into the world. This is about Torah learning. It's about prayer, but in the most pluralistic sense of what we can do to transform the world through transforming ourselves. And so my vision for the future, it's so funny because we're still living in the 20th century narratives. Not that I reject those narratives, but what was the great trauma and glory? Obviously, the trauma is the Shoah, and obviously the glory is the Jewish self-determination, the building of a state that Jews longed for 2,000 years. But now what? What being 70 years, over 80 years removed from the Shoah, almost, and being decades and decades removed from the founding of the state of Israel, what do we as American Jews, develop as a new vision? And how do we hold our individual unique visions alongside a collective vision? And there's no answer to that, not one that I have, but I know the process. And the process is about inside out, doing the hard work internally to transform the world externally, and having the humility to do it together. Because I can go do it on my own as much as I want to do it just on my own. But own your own Judaism doesn't mean we do it alone. There's times to do it alone. But to me, owning your own Judaism means, like you said so beautifully, building community around it.
So Shmuly, I love what you're saying. The part of it that history is important, it's essential, we can't let it go. But there's also a time when the history is no longer the present narrative, right? And this is saying nothing dismissive or diminishing about the Shoah, about the Holocaust, about the rebirth of the state of Israel. But as you said, those were 70, 80 years ago. What are we doing today?
Yes.
Right? So here's my next question, right? I would imagine lots of people ask you, how do you do this on a macro sense? But here's what I'm imagining. I'm a Jew named Moish. We've never met before. And I come up to you, I say, Reb Shmuly, Rabbi Yanklowitz. Maybe I'm courageous and audacious. I just say Shmuly. I say, we don't know each other. I don't know what to do in my Jewish life, right? And you're talking all about starting with the inside and then letting that shine externally. Where do I start? How do I start? What would your answer to me be? How do I start this process of this internal work to share it with the world and to build community around it? I think Rav Shmuly might have frozen. Either that or he's in deep pensive thought here. So Rabbi Shmuly is frozen. For those of you who are just joining, Rabbi Yanklowitz and I met 15 years ago at a summer program called Panim. The work that he has done is extensive within the Jewish community. He's done everything from Jewish pluralistic adult learning, social Jewish justice, Jewish animal advocacy, advocacy for Jewish foster and adoption network. He is a prolific author. And it's such a joy and privilege to be able to name him not only as a colleague, but also as a friend. I know that he's having some technical difficulties. He just got booted. So for anyone just joining or for anyone still listening, please stick around for a few more moments. I'm going to see if we can reconnect with Rav Shmuly in a moment. And he was talking really passionately that it seems daunting, right? When you have this idea of having a self-vision and or a communal vision, a communal vision for the future, it seems daunting, right? How do you begin? How do you change the narrative? How do you change the world? How do you change the story? And one of the things that I loved about what Rav Shmuly just said is he's talking about changing the story comes from within first, right? That the first story that you change is your own. It's self-reflection, self-improvement, and that really is the key, not only to unlocking your full potential and potentiality, but really for bringing that to the world, to sharing that with the broader community, and to unlocking the Jewish community as well. I'm getting a quick message on my phone. Let me just check. Nope, have not heard from Rabbi Shmuly yet. It looks like there were some technical difficulties. So please do stick with. Once again, this is a live stream, Own Your Judaism conversation series. And this is my guest, Rabbi Shmuly Yanklowitz. We'll give it just a little bit longer, and we'll see if we're able to reconnect with Rabbi Shmuly. He's had some technical difficulties, and that seems to have booted him off. I actually have one problem-solving idea, so I'm going to put myself on mute just for a moment, and then I'm going to get it right back to you. All right, welcome back, everyone. Technology is both a wonderful, delightful, and sometimes wonderfully and delightfully frustrating thing. Rav Shmuly's internet apparently just went down. I do have him on the phone, though, and I am hoping that the audio comes through. So we'll keep the conversation going by phone right now. Shmuly, can you still hear me?
Wonderful, yes.
Excellent, great. And I know we have some people listening live and watching live. If you're live and you're able to hear Rav Shmuly, if you just want to make a quick comment in the chat box just to let me know, that would be much appreciated. We cut out Shmuly when I was asking, if I come to you and I say, look, this sounds wonderful and inspiring, and it sounds overwhelming, right? How do I begin this process of this inside out work? I think you're about to join back live. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
There we go. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Good.
All right. Thank you to everyone for sticking around. We appreciate it. Welcome back, Rav Shmuly. Once again, here is the question I'm asking for the third time. Maybe this is the universe's way of saying this is too big a question. I got to let you off the hook, but I'm going to push through. This is a barrier. I'm going to push through this barrier, Shmuly, right? I am coming up to you, and I love this inspirational message that you're offering, that the work starts inside out, right? If I'm going to change the community, I got to change myself. So I come up to you and I say, how do I do that? It's daunting and it's overwhelming. How do I start that process of going from the inside out?
I love the question. Thank you for asking that. And that is the most important question, because to take the abstract and learn how to live it, And so we may be at different stages in our lives. Some of us may feel like we need more support right now. Some of us may feel like we need more challenge, right? Some of us need more gentle. Some of us are ready to be ambitious. And so it's important to ask that question first, because if we're ready for an ambitious growth and we can be in the tension zone, then I would say go to the hot zone. Go to the place where you're feeling the most tension, the most anxiety, the most questioning, and dive into that psychoanalytically, in spiritual writing, in prayer. See what's going on there on an emotional level. Find out what are the areas, not that someone else did wrong to you or to me, but on the area of where we can be better. And then take that moment, and in wrestling with it, in putting together steps on how we can grow, then think about how the new strength we've cultivated can go out into the world. And if someone needs a more gentle approach, rather than going to the tension zone, we can go to a place where we need healing, where we need strength in our lives. And we're in the middle of political division, economic uncertainty, public health crisis. A lot of people need support. And so to find some of the things that we need, and then to figure out how we can help other people's have that need as well. So if I was to push myself to give a more concrete example, I would say something like this. I often found myself recently watching the news and finding things not truthful, or I watching the news and finding certain characters to be arrogant, or seeing deception, or seeing hate. And I wanted to protest those. But I said, before I'm going to protest those, I need to uproot those in my life. Find some own work to say, where am I not living by the highest standard of truth? Where am I cultivating? Why do I live with some hate in me? Right? Where do I have these exact same dimensions? As we all do. We all have every vice in us to different degrees. How do I uproot that in me and then go out and combat it externally as well?
And this is a beautiful synergy of the dichotomies you were talking about earlier, right? The dichotomy between Judaism and life, between all of these things. And it's human nature. It's simply human nature. If I am frustrated with someone else, or angry at someone else, or disappointed in someone else, human nature is such that I am going to name all the reasons I'm angry at you or disappointed in you. And you're suggesting something much, in some ways, radical, but also very simple, which is, before I worry about why I'm frustrated at you or angry with you, I need to deal with my own internal frustration or disappointment or anything. And only once I have kind of come to a bit of a state of understanding of the self, a state of, health with that within me, can I begin to engage with that in the larger world.
Yes. And one of the rabbis talks about this as, if you want to see peace out in the world, you have to start with inner peace. Right. And I think this is very true. I mean, we pray for peace all the time in the Jewish traditional liturgies, and yet people who haven't found some level of inner peace, I think that we can bring more fire than than warmth when we go out into the world, more heat than light, if you will. And that's why I think that the mitzvah of lighting Shabbat candles is Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. Mm-hmm. Shabbat for me is so restorative because it is about going back home, going back inwards, going back to the family, going back to the place of reflection before we go out to the world. And Havdalah is that moment where we light candles on Saturday night and we prepare ourselves to go from the private to the public, to go from the inner to the external. We have rituals for these ideas that prepare us to intertwine the subjective and the objective, the inner and the external.
That's beautiful. And I want to come back to that in a moment. I just want to note that Shara, who is listening and or watching live, frames the question that you're asking this way. She says, where is this in me and how can I uproot it within me? Right? So how do you start that way, right? Find it within me, uproot it within me, and then I can engage in that with others. So there's yet another way to frame that question. And once again, you're going back, Shmuly, to all these things you were hitting on before, because again, you brought up this dichotomy of rootedness is liberating. And I'm hearing that when you talk about Shabbat, right? That I need Shabbat. I need to be rooted. I need to be grounded in Shabbat. The idea of lighting candles to bring in Shabbat, lighting candles to exit Shabbat, to center myself, to ground myself, to just kind of come back from this crazy world before I'm going back out again. So yeah, all of these dichotomies seem to be coalescing.
Yeah. I saw this psychology study some years ago that said if you have a fence in your backyard, that kids will play in the whole backyard. But if you don't have a fence, that they'll play in a very small area. So those who have a backyard, and that taught me or reminded me of the idea that structure enables playfulness. And so I really do believe that spirituality is, we call it a discipline. What's your spiritual discipline? What's your practice? Which is to say that I think in our own ways and the most pluralistic sense, we need rules, we need laws, we need structure, we need boundaries. And in doing that, just like if you go to a yoga class, you go for a half hour, there's a room, there's a mat, you've got a structure. So too in our Jewish lives, a structure. And for me, Shabbat is so crucial to that structure.
Wow. So Shmuly, I could play with you all day in this conversational box. I could talk with you and more importantly, listen to you all day. But I also know that we do have a little bit of structures in our lives and you have a structure in your life too, and that you're going to be called away in just a couple of minutes. So but before I give the final thank you, any final thoughts, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I want to end on the midah, on the character trait of hitlamdut. Hitlamdut is the trait of learning from everything. Learning from everything. What excites me most about Judaism was the framework that you don't go to a class to learn. Every moment of life is exciting, whether it's objectively good or bad, because it's a learning moment. It is a chance to become something new, become something different, to evolve, to grow, to give. And if we see each moment like that, not as pleasurable or painful, or as good or evil, but as each moment providing something to learn and encounter as a vehicle for self-transformation, it becomes exciting. And for me, owning my Judaism has been about taking the wisdom of the tradition and allowing it to be in conversation with the moment, in interaction with what's present for us in this current moment. And I just want to give strength to those who are struggling, wish blessings of healing for those who are sick. I want to offer courage for those who have obstacles to overcome. And I want to offer blessings to those of you who are a part of existing community, working to strengthen that, who are building new community, because we need it. Because Judaism is in our hands. It is in our hands to mold and to keep alive. To keep alive. We have inherited that gift and inherited that responsibility. And it's holy and it's sacred and it's fun and it's exciting. And Reb Moish, I love how you're keeping it alive. And if you're a regular on this podcast, I give you the bracha to continue to be a regular, because this is and this wonderful program. What a great rabbi and what a great platform for empowering others to bring their Judaism to life.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words, first of all. Thank you for Thank you for the blessings for everyone who's listening as well. Thank you also for the beautiful language about Judaism being in our hands. If I had the chutzpah to plagiarize you, I would, but instead I will, Mevi devar b'shem omro. I would love to, I'll quote you on that. That's a beautiful, beautiful passage. But really, most importantly, thank you also for those beautiful words about hitlamdut, the idea of learning from anyone and from everyone at any and every given moment. And thank you for all of the wonderful moments and the gems that you've given all of us to learn from. Just not only through our conversation today, but if you're joining late, just scroll down and you can see Rav Shmuly's remarkable accomplishments and achievements, and we all have so much to learn from you. And thank you very, very much, not only for your inspiration, but also for your time, which I know is valuable as well.
God bless. Thanks.
All right, thank you again to Rav Shmuly for joining, and thank you all very much for joining and for your comments and for your likes as well. Please keep your eye out for more upcoming conversations. And if you would like to be on the mailing list and you're not yet on the mailing list, you can email me at moishe@themindfulrabbi.com, MOISHE@themindfulrabbi.com to get word of all upcoming conversations and other programming through my organization, The Spark Wisconsin. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.